This presentation is delivered by the Stanford Center for Professional Development.
Good evening. I'm Jim Plummer, the Dean of the School of Engineering. We're delighted to have all of you here tonight. In addition to a packed auditorium here on campus, there are literally hundreds of alums and friends watching over the internet live tonight for this really very special event. We're here tonight, as all of you know, to recognize and honor Professor Emeritus Don Knuth for being one of the original 8 heroes of the Stanford Engineering School. The Stanford Engineering Heroes program recognizes the achievements of Stanford engineers who have in many ways profoundly changed the course of human, social, and economic progress through engineering. The heroes, our heroes, embody all that the School of Engineering stands for. Innovation, entrepreneurship, leadership, and obviously world-class teaching and research. And we're just delighted that Don is one of the 8 inaugural Stanford Engineering Heroes. He joins quite an illustrious group of others in this same inaugural class of heroes. Fred Terman, William Hewlett, Dave Packard, Charles Litton, William Durand, Ray Dolby, and Vint Cerf. And so it's quite an illustrious group of people affiliated with Stanford Engineering. So unlike many award events, all that we ask of people who are being recognized as Stanford Engineering Heroes is for them to tell us how they would like to spend the day on campus. And so what's occurring here tonight is really Don's suggestion. He spent some really wonderful times earlier today with some of our students in computer science and other parts of the university, and we had a nice dinner with some of these students. And he asked tonight that we just have this event where he could answer questions. And so that's really the format of the evening. Now, Don, even though the title of this session is All Questions Answered, Don wanted me to make certain that you realize that if you ask questions outside the field of computer programming, that he claims not to be a particular expert in some of these areas, and his answers actually may carry somewhat less authority in some of these other areas than a Wikipedia article, for example. So the format for the evening is I'm going to say a few words of introduction about Don, and then he will get up and make a few comments and remarks. And then we're delighted that Professor Dan Bonnet of our CS department is here, and Dan will actually moderate the Q&A session. We have it set up here so that people who are watching over the internet can ask questions, and Dan will say a bit about that in just a second. But there'll be plenty of opportunity for those of you here in the audience to ask questions. If it's convenient, try and get to the microphones, or we'll bring them to you if you're in the middle of the room so we can capture the questions as well. So I don't really think I need to say very much about Don. All of you are here tonight because you know him and have tremendous respect for him. He's clearly one of the world's most influential computer scientists. He laid the foundations for modern compilers and is widely recognized as the father of algorithm analysis. He's also the author, as all of you know, of the landmark series, The Art of Computer Programming, which is considered by many people to be one of the most important scientific writings of the past century. Don will be doing a book signing at the end of the formal session as well, for those of you that would like to have him sign a book. It was actually during the time when Don was beginning to write these books that he became very frustrated with sort of the capability of electronic publishing tools. And so, of course, taking matters into his own hands, he wrote his own code or language for programming for text setting, which, of course, quickly became the gold standard for mathematical and scientific publications. It's interesting. I learned a few things about Don's earlier life as preparing for this event. He actually demonstrated his computational prowess, at least the earliest record we could find of it, I guess there may have been some earlier, in 8th grade when he won a national contest to form as many words as possible out of the phrase Ziegler's giant bar. So you take those 3 words, and then the contest was to make as many words as you can out of the letters that are in those 3 words. So apparently the judges had in mind that the winner might generate something on the order of a couple of thousand words out of those letter combinations. Don found 4,500 and won the competition. He went to college, what is now Case Western Reserve University, for his undergraduate work, and he initially actually planned to study music in college. He's quite, as I'm sure all of you know, he's quite an accomplished musician and plays the organ, the tuba, the saxophone, and I think several other instruments as well. And the story goes that one day he was on his way to band practice and he missed the bus. And so waiting for the next bus to arrive, he actually unraveled an extra credit math problem that was so difficult in the math class that the professor teaching the class had said that if anybody could solve it, they'd get an automatic A in the class. And so he solved it while he was waiting for the next bus, and that turned into him becoming a math major with the highest GPA of any of the math majors in his class. In 1963, Don earned his PhD degree from Caltech in mathematics, and not long after that he joined the computer science faculty here at Stanford. He taught here unbelievably successfully for many years, and then decided he wanted to devote full time to working on his books, and so he retired from the university, and he now spends, as you know, his full time writing his books. But we still see him on campus riding his bike around, and he still gives lectures on campus, and is still a great friend of all of us in engineering and in computer science. He's obviously received virtually every award that's given in the field of computer science, including the Turing Award, the National Medal of Science, membership in the National Academy of Sciences, and so on. So tonight we're just delighted to be able to honor him and to recognize him. And Don, we have for you, as a slight token of our appreciation, this is a replica of the plaque that sits on the honors wall just outside the Stanford Engineering Heroes wall that sits just outside the auditorium here. So please join me in welcoming Don Knuth.
Okay, well, is this working? Yeah. Okay, well, I'm I guess I have to start off by saying I'm uncomfortable as a hero. You know, I walk by the corridors of the computer science department and pass one hero's door after another, but anyway, I'm quite happy to be here as a representative of a heroic department. The other thing is about these questions. A lot of you in the audience I know have been in my classes, and I had this tradition at the last day of quarter. You didn't have to come to class if you didn't want to, but if you did come, I would answer any questions that you had. This is so that people pay their tuition and they get through a whole quarter and they haven't still got the answer to the question they want. So I always reserve the last day of class for that. It's an idea that I got from Richard Feynman at Caltech before coming here, and I kept it up every year. So here I am back again now, ready to answer any question on any subject. And maybe Dan wants to say how it's going to interact with the web.
Sure. I'll say a few words. So I'm honored to be moderating this event. My name is Dan Bonnet. I'm a professor here. So let's see. I'm just in charge of the mechanics. So there are two microphones in the aisles. So anyone who wants to ask a question, we just ask that you please walk up to the microphone and ask the question there, so everyone can hear you. Especially the folks on the web can hear the questions. We're also using Google Moderator today, so anyone on the web can submit a question through Google Moderator. I'll be sitting here, and from time to time, I'll interrupt the flow of questions that are coming from the audience, and I'll just read questions from the web. I also want to mention that Google Moderator is kind of an impressive software in that folks can vote on other people's questions. So if you have an iPhone or an Android phone and you want to vote on people's questions, please go ahead and do that. Similarly, if you're on the web page, go ahead and vote. And actually, I guess I just wanted to say one sentence. I guess it's a story that I'm sure many of you have the similar experience. When I was growing up, I just happened to run into one of our bookshelves. Happened to run into volume 2 of The Art of Computer Programming. Volume 2 is on semi-numerical algorithms, and I read it. And I fell in love with computing on numbers and primes. And as a result, I don't think I ever told you this, Don. No. It is because of that book that I ended up doing cryptography, and that is what's my main area of research these days. If I had run into volume 1 or volume 3, my life could have been completely different.
No. Wow. No, no, not because now you've been doing so much that means I have to write volume 2 squared.
Yes, indeed. Well, since I'm the moderator, I guess I get to ask the very first question, and then I'm going to hand it to everybody to follow on. So the question that I'm curious about is, as you probably know, the mathematicians have always had like a natural key open problem that they can present to the public. It's a very simple open problem it's very easy for folks to understand, and they could get people to kind of think about deep questions. I guess it used to be Fermat's last theorem. Now, unfortunately, that's no longer an open question. So I guess the leading question these days is, say, the Riemann hypothesis. Maybe not as easy to understand, but still fairly easy to state. So my question to you is, if you wanted to get someone excited about algorithms, what would you use as the kind of the nice, beautiful, open problem to present?
Oh wow. Okay, so you want a problem that a young person would understand, not a problem that necessarily a U.S. congressman would understand.
Yes. Smart young person, exactly.
Okay, well, there are lots of copies of my book out in the corridor, and it's full of research problems. So maybe of course, the most famous open problem in theoretical computer science is about P versus NP. And that's still not that easy to understand, to explain to a young person. So still, it's a little bit like asking a parent which of their children is their favorite. So there are several things. Okay, well, let me give you one and see if I can get it right. Does anyone have the book there? Right? Okay. If somebody has a copy of Volume 4A, I could turn to the page and just put it on screen. That would help. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. Well, anyway, there's lots of research problems in here, but there's one that I think might be fun to work on and lead somewhere. I have no idea how easy it's going to be or anything. See if I can remember what it was, where it is here. But it essentially it arises to say, can you get all? Let me see. Boy, this might take me. Might take me too long. Maybe I should use my computer to do a search for the M1. Okay, so let me pass on that and give you one of the first ones that I found here. It's so we have so suppose you want to find all ways of mixing, say, three zeros with 3 1s, and so in this particular case, where I think there are 20 ways to do it, and the idea is that every step you have to get to another one by swapping the first one with some others. So I could swap the 0 and the 1, and I could go 1 0 0 0 1 1, for example. Okay, and then now I can swap that with some other 0, so I can go to 0 1 0 0 1 1, and so on. But I'm supposed to get every one exactly once and generate those all. Now it's a simple problem you can explain to kids. But it has a lot of corollaries, and maybe even in cryptography, because it was invented by a guy named Wiedemann, who you probably know at NSA. In fact, there are lots of simple problems like that remain open, and no reason why a young person couldn't solve it with a new idea. Okay.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Jeff?
Now let's see. Let's start over here.
I'm Jeffrey Oldham. In the 1790s, the French tried to introduce a metric time system.
Yeah.
And yesterday I was reading the article about leap seconds and the communications of the ACM. So we have leap seconds sometimes in June and December because the Earth is not rotating exactly at 24 hours. So how would a computer scientist design a time system taking into account the fact that humans live here on this Earth?
Taking into account what?
The fact that we're humans living here on Earth.
Okay. So, yeah, I guess that's a fact. So now if we go back to my, can you go back to the flashing computer screen? This is the things that we've had flashing on the screen here are I know it takes a while, but anyway, these are sort of random pages from the other book that's in the corridor, the book called Papers on Fun and Games, and one of the topics in that book, it is my first technical paper, which I published. Well, I sent it in when I was still in high school, and it was published in Mad Magazine. And in fact, I had it was a system of weights and measures that solves your problem, Jeff, because it says don't worry about the fact that the year isn't an even number of days or anything like that. Let's just make the whole system decimal. So forget about having 365.2429 so on days in a year. Let's have 100. It has lots of advantages. As you know, you have birthdays more often, and the conversion from instead of having light years, you have light Kosnovskis, but the conversion is exactly the same as the speed of light. So a lot of things become simpler in a decimal. That's of course, maybe a computer scientist would have made it binary, but I didn't know about that at the time. Okay. So yeah, I want to run through a lot of questions so that we cover.
So let's see. So there's a very popular question online.
Here we go.
So what could still be done in the computer science world that you would feel would provide the greatest impact to humanity? What is left to discover, build, or create?
Oh boy, almost everything.
That is the top question. And
okay, very good. Okay, well, I would probably at the top of my list would be in the field of medical, making patients' histories visually easy to understand, and to understand epidemics and all kinds of things about health. And I think there's a tremendous opportunity there, not just to give it things in terms of pie charts and things like that, but you can animate and you can show all kind of different. It seems to me that there must be good ways to take all this data. Somehow we have to worry about the privacy and security, as you know, but still be able to make much better ways to visualize that, and that'll improve the happiness of patients and doctors and the health of everybody. I mean, that's just one off the top of my head.
Hi. I'm sorry, I don't ask the smartest of questions, but still my question is, do you spend much time reading on the internet? And if you do, which sites do you read? Do you read Reddit? Do you read Hacker News, Twitter, or whatever?
Okay, the question, I certainly am addicted to the internet, and I don't know how I could live without it. And if I were at home, we could just go through the history of my queries to Safari, for example, this morning. Probably used it several dozen times today. I translated something from French, but I also looked up lots of phrases and words and so on. But I try not to get too addicted to things that are obviously going to consume all my time, like various games. I write this book about fun and games, and that's really the story of my life. But also how I resisted not doing only things that we're exploring in that way.
So, quick follow-on question from the moderator.
Yeah, right.
So, folks want to know if you contribute to Wikipedia.
Do I contribute to Wikipedia? That's interesting. Yeah, now it's been a few months. I don't have an account at Wikipedia. I don't log in, but they always say it's better if you do that. But I often find typos, and so I often just correct commas and stuff like that. I can't let that go by. But I don't have time to follow through and see if the things I suggested actually got done. But often I'll find that a reference is really screwed up, or that they really don't know the history of the subject, and so I'll correct the article, and then in the explanation page, I'll give my I'll give all my reasons. But the funniest story about the Wikipedia is that I'm trying to remember exactly, but I just had gotten a new computer, and I was trying to find out if my internet connection was working. So well, up comes Google, and so I asked for Knuth. What else do you know? So I checked. And at the top it said the Wikipedia story about Knuth. And so the first time I read what Wikipedia had to say about me, and lo and behold, I going down a few paragraphs, and it says he is not a fan of Wikipedia. So I corrected it, and I said, you're not supposed to correct the article about you, but I corrected it, and I said, he is a fan of Wikipedia, but he has reservations about so and so. About, for example, having to keep track of for a lifetime of something that you might have contributed to make sure it doesn't get screwed up again. But anyway. I did that, but I was logged in sort of anonymously through a Stanford network. But somebody at Wikipedia actually took the trouble to find out who had made that correction, and he shot back. My secretary a couple of days later said, "By the way, was that you really who made this correction?" Okay, so that's my Wikipedia stuff.
Hi, I'm an undergrad in a computer science program, and I won't speak for everyone, but for my classmates at the University of Waterloo in Canada, I find it increasingly so that not many people know who you are or what you've done. Do you think this is a problem?
Yeah. Well, no, there are books for sale out there, but that's not my life. You come from Waterloo today? No? Well, it's a great. That's a great school. That's the Cheriton School of Computer Science.
I'm an intern.
What?
I'm an intern.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, no. I think it's a tragedy that young kids don't know who Martin Gardner was. I asked that. I gave a talk to our grad students, and I asked people raise their hand about Martin. Martin died about a year ago today, actually, and he was certainly a hero of mine. And one of the most certainly the most successful ever at explaining mathematics to the world, and inspiring people to get going. You must have read some of his stuff too, yes. Not just volume 2, right? Okay, but no, I'm only concerned if people forget the ideas that are in my books rather than my name. But I try in the books to be a spokesperson for all of the thousands of people who have contributed to the field, and that's the thing that bothers me is if people don't learn anything from the past and they just think they have to invent everything from scratch again. Because there's so many great ideas out there, and I've spent almost 50 years now trying to organize some of them and present them in a way that's useful to build on further. back to the internet. Back to
Well,
the web.
no.
Oh,
You have a question?
I don't have a very smart question, but I wonder, I have read that you don't like to use email. So
yes.
these days, Facebook and Twitter is in thing, so do you use it or you don't?
Yeah. So now I understand somebody is tweeting right now about this lecture. So that's a first. My wife is a big fan of Facebook, and that's one of the things I don't have time to be addicted to. But Facebook fills a terrific need for most people, but not for me. I don't have a need to be in contact with people. I have a need to have hours and hours of free time to think about stuff that needs a long attention span. So, but don't apologize for the quality of a question. That was a great question, but also just if it occurred to you, it probably occurred to somebody else. So don't be afraid to ask a question. We're not in a competition for best question of the day.
So let's take a question from the internet. So let's see. So the question is, you developed tech at a time when computers were slow and WYSIWYG word processing didn't exist. If you were to develop tech today, would you make changes because of how computing and displays have evolved? Okay.
So a lot of you know that I worked on this typesetting language, and that was in the way old days of the 70s when it actually took some time to typeset. Now we've almost got WYSIWYG anyway, because the computers are so fast. I just hit carriage return and I get my book. And since it's so fast, there's no reason for me to improve it anymore, as far as I can see, because it's not a bottleneck to anybody doing it. I did try to write something. The main thing for me was just trying to make something that would be archival, that wouldn't be changing every year, so that it would be possible 50 years from now to take a document from now and still and you hadn't had to be updated all the time. And so I actually worked the other way. Rather than trying to keep up with the latest, I tried to have something that could serve as a fixed point amidst all this wonderful change. Still have something that stays as somehow you can build on it because you know it's firm ground.
I think you've been standing for a while.
As a student back here in the 80s, I actually still think of Margaret Jacks as a CS building. But anyway, we learned Pascal in the 80s. I moved on, I learned C, then I learned C++, I dabbled in Java. I've done software basically for 25 years. I still think it's hard to write. Any thoughts on how we can make software development easier to write, faster to write, less error prone, easier to debug, especially with multi-threading coming around?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that, and they're embedded in a book that I wrote called Literate Programming. But even if you use the best techniques that I know, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be easier. It's going to be more reliable than anything else, any other way I know. But I don't see that there's any royal road to software any more than there's a royal road to mathematics. There's this famous story about Archimedes, and the king said, tell me how to make mathematics simple, and like something like that. So there's no silver bullet as far as I know, and there never will be. But we can keep trying to have techniques that are better. And my shtick through this literate programming idea is write programs with the idea that you're writing for people to read them, and not thinking mostly that it's a computer going to read them. So I've got a web page about literate programming that links to some really good pages about it, and it doesn't. It doesn't. Excuse me. My mind got off the subject because I just saw my student Louis sitting there, and I thought of something I want to say to him. Okay, so literate programming, to me is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it's something that I worked on myself, so I can't view it in an unbiased manner. Still, I use it to write about 5 programs a week, and I can't. And the most dramatic example is the program that I wrote, which is a meta simulator for the MMIX computer. It was so difficult that I don't believe I could have written it at all without the ideas of literate programming. It would have defeated me and anybody I know. But with this tool, I could do it. So I'm a big fan of that approach. And the main idea is that I'm writing a program that's a hypertext instead of a simple text, and I'm addressing it to another human being, possibly myself. But when I'm writing the program, I'm in teacher mode rather than in hacker mode. Is there a long?
Oh, there are many.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, I better schedule the.
That's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. I'll let you moderate that. Okay.
The question about the application side of mathematics and computer science. So do you think it's possible to build a comprehensive mathematical or computer model of modern economics where you can throw in certain variables and get the prices for a commodity A later on? If not, why?
Okay, so if I could do that, then so could everybody else, and so everybody would be equal. That's why.
So here's a question that's getting a lot of attention here. So the question is, what's your opinion of quantum computers? And if somebody builds a quantum computer, are we basically going to go back to the drawing board as far as algorithms are concerned?
Yeah, yeah.
And what does that mean for the books?
Okay, that's wonderful question. Quantum computers are very different from the computers that I'm good at, and so if someone actually builds it, it's quite conceivable that I wouldn't have the foggiest idea how to use them, and somebody else should write books about those. It's really interesting, the ideas of quantum computers and multiple worlds and all kind of things like that would truly revolutionize the things that are some things that we think are hard would become easy, and that might just change the world, and everybody who really wanted to do those things would forget about the sequential or the kinds of computers we have now, and that would be good news for me, though, because then I could finish my books much faster, because I would still, I still like this model, and even though nobody else would be using it, I would still like, because I do this because it's intellectually satisfying to solve the problems that I'm doing when I use this kind of computers, and I don't care if somebody spoils it by inventing another kind of computer. I still like this one.
Yes, back when I was a student here, and back up like some of the political aspects of some of the algorithms. Like back when I was a student here, RSA had come out, and there was all this controversy about people can now hide their stuff, and then PGP, pretty good privacy, and then later they had Napster, but Napster got shut down. But so they invented BitTorrent, which is distributed peer-to-peer, and so there's no middlemen. And now there's something called Bitcoin that's come along, which is completely distributed. No middleman, digital cryptocurrency. So I was just wondering if you've been following any of these trends and what you have to say about it.
Dan. Well,
This is your hour, Don.
What?
The only comment I would say is, since Marty is standing right there, here we would use Diffie-Hellman as the example.
Oh, beautiful.
Go ahead, Marty.
Okay, Don.
So we have Marty Hellman, who's
I set up the guy before me. I know that. Your website has frequently asked questions. It also has infrequently asked questions. Do you have any idea why those are infrequently asked questions, and why did you feel a need to ask them?
Okay, so yeah, Marty's not only the inventor of many key ideas in cryptography, but also activist for peace and many good things. And the part of my website about infrequently asked questions, I couldn't help but write when I had spent some months going around the country and hearing what people were talking about, and nobody was talking about what I thought were the the important questions that were facing our country, and still do, So I urge you to take a look at these infrequently asked questions, to think about them, because I don't have the answers to them. This is all questions answered day, but these are questions I don't know how to answer. But I also have links on there to the speech that Richard Weizsäcker gave at one critical point in Germany's history. The only thing, I'm not an activist, and I just have these feelings that people ought to be thinking about the questions, and not and I'm disturbed that hardly anybody does. Unfortunately, I don't think the points I make on that page are sufficiently strong, because I haven't got any hate mail for it. Okay.
Professor Knuth, could you share with us a memorable mistake you made and the lesson you learned from it?
How much time do we have? Okay. All right. Well, okay. So first I can say I wrote a paper called "The Errors of Tech," which lists more than 1,000 mistakes that occurred while I was writing tech, and also has various ideas about how to learn from mistakes. This pervades engineering. Civil engineers have to know about the bridges that collapsed and so on. So but somehow I don't remember right now any mistake I ever made, because tonight I'm a hero. But okay, so let me see. Certainly, I backed the wrong horse various times. Well, okay. I mean, the things that come to my mind are more like things to be scolded about, rather than chastised. So I have to pass on that one. That's too hard. It's embarrassing. I should be able to think of. I should be able to think of lots of things. Certainly, I know. Well, let me tell you just one, since we were talking about tech. I based tech on binary arithmetic inside, but decimal arithmetic outside for the user. So inside of tech, everything is measured in terms of a scaled point, and there's 536 scaled points to a point, to a printer's point. Now I could have made that 100,000 instead of the power of 2, and then when a user says do something 4/10 of a point, it would have been the same inside the computer as in the source code. But instead I converted to the nearest binary fraction, and therefore strange anomalies occur which are very confusing to the user. It's too late to change that, so there's a mistake that I learned from, but I never was able to recover from and take back.
Actually, there's a question on the web. So the question is, if you were starting out as a PhD student today, what area of computer science do you think you'll work in?
If I were starting out as a PhD student today, what area of computer science would I like to work in? I can just go down down the halls and see that they all look pretty attractive. So I would choose the one that was closest to my own skill set, and I probably would be most attracted to by computer graphics right now, because I really like using left brain and right brain at the same time. So I like beautiful images as well as being able to apply math to that.
I was hoping you'd say cryptography.
What?
I was hoping you'd say cryptography.
Well, actually, you're right. But I remember something. Yeah, in fact, that's even because I remember the way you gave a talk a couple of years ago. You said, to study cryptography, you have to really study all of computer science,
right.
because everything has to be secure, and so that does. So yeah, you got to know graphics too, so that tops it. Why did I miss that? No, because I really want to learn about elliptic curves and all that stuff. I think it's really cool. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you think we will ever create an actual artificial intelligence, one capable of self-awareness and able to increase its own intelligence exponentially, like a singularity?
I think that if that ever happens, we won't know it the day it is, because it'll be sort of there'll be more combination between people and computers. To the point where finally, when the people get left out of it, it'll almost be unnoticeable somehow. But I don't really know. I still think that going towards that goal has always been one of the most fruitful sources of problems in computer science, and will continue as far as I know. To me, the biggest unsolved question in all of science is the mystery of consciousness, and even though we're learning a lot more about the way the cortex work in the brain and things like this, I still that seems to me the problem that's least solved of anything I know.
So the question that I had was, we have lots of these famous problems in computer science, such as P versus NP, but what do you think is the biggest bottleneck in our understanding of the computational sciences to improving quality of life with computer science?
So now you're asking about quality of life as opposed to quality of I mean, the question Dan asked earlier was more like to stimulate the intellect, but you want to say, well, how to improve our life? Yeah, I guess okay. I don't have a great answer, but the random thoughts that come to my mind. This book that I just finished, that we're flashing things on this. Papers on Fun and Games. I want to say a word or two about this. It's the 8th volume out of 8 of the papers that I've written throughout my career, and we saved this one to last because it was the dessert, somehow I've always enjoyed. I mean, I can't justify a single chapter in this book on engineering grounds. That it was necessary to write it, but somehow I couldn't not write these things. I felt my life isn't complete unless I'd written it. So in some ways, when you talk about quality of life, you can say, well, why do people build bridges? And the answer is so that they can cross the river and have fun on the other side of the river. In other words, there's somehow there's part of life has to do with satisfaction of curiosity, but also you're seeing beautiful patterns and being able to enjoy health. But a lot of the other things we do that we consider more practical are the means to be able to have fun and games. So okay, so but I don't understand why, but this book when I finished it, I felt an overwhelming joy that I was able to live at a time in history when it was possible to write a book like this, because it seemed to me that this was really somehow more connected with my soul, or what I at the basis of what I do. That if I hadn't been able to do this kind of thing, then my life would have felt much less complete. But a lot of the questions tonight have been for me to say, what's the of all the things you know, what's the top in some category or other, and this idea of rating things as saying what's the best, what's the most interesting, most important. I never enjoy that kind of ranking, because well, to tell you another story. I remember Professor Hartmanis, Joris Hartmanis, coming to talk to me in the middle '60s, and he said to me, Don, well, what's the most important result in computer science this year? And I couldn't think of anything, but I mean that was really standout, and I would say, oh yeah, this is a great breakthrough. But I liked his question, so every year after, I asked myself this question: what was the greatest thing that happened in computer science this year? And I never come up with an answer. But after 5 years, after 10 years, the whole field has changed. Everything is different. And the reason is it's the small results, the accumulation, thousands of people adding bricks to the wall, building these structures. That's what really matters, and not some giant anything that gets on the top 10 list. So I tend to look at questions in that way, and I think of almost whatever people in this room are doing is somehow contributing to quality of life for the whole.
It's probably worth repeating the name of the book. It's Selected Papers on Fun and Games by Don Knuth, of course.
Yeah. So there are some examples again of left brain, right brain, some beautiful patterns that come when you start studying knight's move on chessboard. Okay, now these
let's
people
do
are
one
voting.
from the web.
So
let's see. There's a very popular question here on basically how, on tough mathematical problems that you've solved, and what is generally your approach to solving these hard problems?
Okay, so I worked on lots of different problems over my life, and the hardest one that I was ever able to resolve was joint with 3 other people. Although I did, I think I did my share. It's called the birth of the giant component in a random graph. There's a big bang occurs if you start out with just a set of vertices, and then you at random choose 2 vertices and join them, and do that over and over again. And you ask how many things are joined together. All of a sudden, a dramatic change happens when the number of connections you've added is approximately 1/2 the number of vertices. 1/2 the number of vertices. Then it goes from being almost everybody isolated to having components that are about the size of this 2/3 power of the number of vertices, but then almost immediately becomes linear, and it goes through a very fast phase transition, a double phase transition, and by using some ideas of complex analysis that I found really fun to explore, it was possible to slow this down and watch it happen by measuring time in a different way. And we could see step by step how this explosion takes place, and so that was my sort of greatest mathematical discovery, and I enjoyed doing it by just sort of always looking around me. Whenever I had a partial result, I would learn the territory as much as I can. So when I go into a problem, I try to train my brain. The first week I'm doing baby steps, and hopefully I can start doing giant steps after a few weeks by getting familiar with a problem domain, problem area. It helps to have a rich problem like that one, where there were many beautiful patterns just out there, waiting to be discovered.
Yep. Please go ahead.
Hi, I was a graduate student here more than a decade ago, and I'm now faculty at the Albach Educational Institute, which is a university in India. Professor Knuth, you are remembered as not only as a great computer scientist, but also as a great teacher. So my question now is that over the past several years, the role of the teacher is changing from that of a traditional teacher to a facilitator, because almost all the information that a teacher can probably pass into a student is already available to the student because of the information explosion. So what are your thoughts on that, and then what would be your advice for young colleagues?
I really think it's always been that way, that the information was there. People were getting at it in different ways, but it's not that different now. As far as I know that we have more animated things now than we did then, and so on. But still, real knowledge it sinks in about the same rate to a person's brain as ever, and you get. In my classes, well, I'm glad you said that I'm known as a good teacher, but I think at Stanford we have really good students, so it's not a random sample. I do try to be a good writer and think a lot about exposition that way. But in my classes at Stanford, I tried to concentrate on what wasn't in the book, and like what the person said before, recovering from mistakes. And so we would try to solve problems as a group, and then we wouldn't get the answer right away, but then we would learn how to rectify what we'd done. And so there haven't been enough books of this kind yet, and so that also motivating students by when they see that the professor flubs in some way, then they get a little bit of confidence in themselves. So I always tried to make a lot of mistakes too while I was teaching.
That's good to remember. So a related question here on the web: what are your thoughts, just related to information overload? What are your thoughts on open access journals as opposed to subscription journals, and open access textbooks as opposed to paid for textbooks? All can be delivered over the internet. Right. How do you see that playing out?
Right. There's all of these things with open.
Can this be downloaded?
This cannot be downloaded now. It costs you $40. I'm sorry. You get 10% off in the hall. No. Right. At the beginning, I like to have moderators, quality control, and a lot of things can be very well done by crowdsourced and done that way. But I still am such a nitpicker that I don't trust anybody else to deal with the I's, dotting the I's in my own book. I don't know. So my approach right now has been to pay people when they find mistakes. But I am thinking about the future and making ebooks out of everything, and eventually making it more accessible. Right now, though, the quality control is important to me. The open source journals, I think, are really natural, because the scientific community for years has always been doing all of the volunteer work for free, doing the refereeing and editorial things, and natural to publish in commercial journals when there was a lot of value added by the commercial press, they could do typesetting, things that were really difficult to do. And they could copy editing. Now they do very good printing and binding, and keeping subscription lists. That all takes professional work, but comparatively speaking, they're making something like 30% profit, on the shoulders of people who did volunteer work to give the content. So it's not so. Most of the commercial publishers, except for professional societies, have started to, I think, be run by businessmen rather than scientists. So open access journals. I've been a big fan of that. People know that I felt guilty of being the editor of a journal that was whose publisher had started to make universities go broke by its rapacious policies, and so I looked up the facts, and when the rest of the editorial board looked at them, they agreed with me, and we resigned 100% and went to went to ACM to start transactions on algorithms, and there are many other such cases. Still, I'm not a total fan of this idea of writing by the whole community, because I know there are a lot of subtle things that might seem wrong unless you really understand them, and so there's a really terrific chance that that democracy will not work for some of the lines of code in tech, for example. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. What are your perspectives on the increasingly fractured state of academia, and what would you change if you had the power?
Including the what?
Oh, sorry?
Improving the what in academia?
No. What's your perspective on the increasingly fractured state of academia? And would you change anything if you had the power? Fractured
space of academia? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess I better get a hearing aid. Excuse me. My idea is that a few years from now, people will be identifying themselves with two areas instead of one. Everybody will start thinking that their role in life is to be an edge rather than a vertex, serving as an interface between two parts of academia. So there will be people who are have two subspecialties, but that sort of defines them as a link between those, and the only problem getting there is the quality control, because you need enough to be able to tell someone who's really good at a good link from bad. But anyway, that's my feeling of the way things will evolve.
This question concerns your stint as the manager of the basketball team at Case.
My hearing is really getting bad now.
This question concerns your stint as a manager of the basketball team at Case Western.
Yeah.
And I saw a video about it which claimed that you used some really good math to get good results for your team. Could you briefly discuss that, and did it work?
Okay, so if you look in this book under basketball, got it here. Okay. Zoom in. Okay, basketball. Oh, I got a little joke in here about the Celtics. Excuse me. So, okay, so Celtics. Okay, so 199 to 208 is where you want here. And so here's the you know, here's a picture that came out in the Cleveland papers at the time. This is me. This is the data sheet that I use during the games to get statistics, and here's my formula. Okay. This, by the way, you might have seen the movie Social Networks, where they had a couple of seconds where they showed the algorithm in that. And I had a chance to watch that movie while I was on a plane to England, and we had individual TV sets, so I could freeze frame and I could get the algorithm and copy it down. I think this is a more interesting algorithm than the one in that. But I still don't believe the formula anymore. Yeah. Luis.
As a question, you look at problems and you solve some, and you analyze others. And my question to you is, what is deep in your heart, what do you like more, the solving of problems or the analysis of them or how to solve them?
Well, okay. So if I'm able to solve it, I like the fact that I usually like the math that went into the solution because it gives me a rush when I see things canceling out and actually working and seeing something go through. Like when I was working on this giant component problem, it's a similar thing where I could see that the chance that a random graph, the largest component, always is the only one that has well, it's a technical term, but more than one cycle. Always stays. The chance that there's only one such component throughout the whole evolution of the graph would turn out to be something like pi squared over 12. I don't know. There was some 7/12 pi squared. I don't remember the exact number, but anyway, getting that the mathematics was the beauty there to see the number. It's similar when I was. I mean, to me, the intellectual excitement of knowing how to solve a whole lot of problems is more important than solving any one particular problem. But I wrote a simulation language once that made it easy for people to figure out how well certain queuing mechanisms would work, or where you have different computers hooked together and or other kinds of units and how much delay there would be and so on. But I always felt that it was more important, more fun to set up the model of these systems than actually to run them and get the answers. In fact, I regretted putting output statements in this language. I thought that the learning occurred while you were describing the model. So I have these strange ideas that the journey is more important than the destination. Most of the time, I look for I look around to smell the roses as I'm working on problems.
I think something like 35 or more years ago, I remember you saying that computer science didn't have enough deep results to qualify as a real science. And my question is, are we there yet?
Yes. Yeah, but actually, I guess I didn't put it in. Okay. In the art of computer programming, I added a new appendix to match the one that's in this one. There's an index to algorithms and theorems in volume 4A, and then I put a similar index in the first three volumes. But in each case, I had another quotation at the bottom of the page, and I quoted that particular statement in one of those three volumes. But that that was something I said, as you say, long, long ago. And a friend of mine had said he's willing to believe that computer science is a field as soon as it has 1,000 deep theorems. And I said, no, 500 deep theorems and 500 deep algorithms. But you know, as soon as we reach that level, then we'll certainly justify our presence on campus. And I think we passed that 20 years ago easily. If it weren't true, I would have been done with these books long, long ago.
So we're actually at the top of the hour, but there's one maybe last question.
Yeah, okay.
That everybody on the web seems to want to know the answer to.
Okay.
So when you write your programs, what programming language do you write them
What?
in?
Yeah. All right. So I use C-Web, and here's an example. In this book, I have an extensive example of a literate program for the game of adventure. The thing that sort of started computer gaming in the first place. By the way, I also have a really cool map of the caves in here, which I think is better than. You got to check that out. Anyway, but Will Crowther and Don Woods came up with this game adventure in the 70s, and it was one of the reasons why computers were used in the 70s. I mean, that and the game of life were two things that everybody was doing, but then when their boss came by, they would hide it. And John McCarthy forbade people from playing this game during working hours, and so on. But it's addictive and full of great beautiful ideas. So I wanted to capture that in the C-Web language, which is my favorite language for writing programs. I write about 5 programs a week in C-Web. Most of them are pretty short, but sometimes it takes me, quite a few lines of code. And I'm going to be next month. I'm going to be, or I guess July, because I'm going to be away next month. I'm going to try to write a really good SAT solver in C-Web in July. I got another book called the Stanford Graph Base that consists of 35 examples of C-Web programs, each of which 8 pages long or so, that have interesting algorithms applied to graph theory, and I enjoyed much writing those programs. I had Stanford undergraduates helping me, and to me, as I said half an hour ago or an hour ago, it's the greatest invention since sliced bread. But I can't be unbiased since I came up with it. But to me, it's the most important spin-off of my work on tech because I developed that style of programming in order to write tech and Metaphon.
Great. Okay. I think we're at the top of the hour. So Don is going to be out for a few more minutes, just outside the room. Oh, maybe even here.
Yeah, I'm going to sit here.
Oh, we can sit here. That's fine. Refreshments are outside. Yes, thank you. Yes, all right. So I'd like to thank Don for.